So today we're going to be talking about the Syrian Civil War and how this thing has pretty much ended. Now, the Syrian Civil War against the Assad regime started in 2011 and has pretty much ended now present day in 2024. We're going to be talking about all that has happened, how it happened, and kind of the future of Syria and where that stands in the international perspective. If you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All that support is greatly appreciated. A late happy birthday to Liam, and let's go ahead and jump straight into this. All right, so we're going to be starting on the live Syrian map. This is the same website that I use for Ukraine. It's called Live UA map. You can also look at Israel and all these other countries that have internal issues, but we're focusing on Syria, obviously, because that is the topic of today's video. So HTS and the SDF, those are the only two rebel groups that remain. Well, there's also these guys up here, that's Turkey, but these are two major rebel groups. They have one, as we can see, Syria. Technically, their old government exists. Not for long, though. I wouldn't count on it. But as you can see, the HTS has pretty much taken over all of Syria. They have taken the capital, Damascus, that is under their control. And Assad, of course, their leader, or former leader, has fled the country and is now in Russia. He is probably going to live the rest of his life there because I don't know if there's any coming back to this. This is pretty much gone. All right, so hopping over to CNN World, they did a pretty good article on the end of the Syrian Civil War. So after decades of brutal rule, Bashar al-Assad, his regime has been toppled. Here's what you need to know. So I guess we'll give some background information. For a half a century, the Assad family ruled over Syria with an iron fist, with long documented reports of mass incarceration, torture, extrajudicial killings, and atrocities against their own people. On Sunday, after 13 years of civil war that fractured the country, the regime came crashing down. Rebel fighters declared Damascus liberated in a video of statement on state television, sending Syrian President Bashar al-Assad fleeing to Russia. So he's gone. He fled Syria a couple days before their capital fell to rebel forces, and he is now in asylum in Russia. He's probably, more than likely, definitely safe there since he is an ally of Putin. Now, what exactly happened here? We had an armed rebel alliance that charged across Syria over 11 days, sweeping through major cities and reigniting a conflict that had been largely static since a 2020 ceasefire agreement. They did this in 11 days. Don't ever tell me that my wars are too fast. But this is a rebel coalition. This isn't just one group. This is a bunch of groups coming together to topple the Assad government. And as we see, that has worked. This coalition is led by militant group leader Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. I hope I pronounced that right, or HTS for short. Now, a little bit about the rebels that just took over the government. So like I said, they are a coalition and they are calling themselves the Military Operations Command. It's made up of various Islamist and moderate factions who, despite their differences, are united in fighting the Assad regime, ISIS, and Iran-backed militias. So something to also keep in mind here, the main Syrian government is gone, but there are still like pockets of ISIS, and of course the whole thing was with Hezbollah and stuff like that. So it isn't like 100% over yet. It's more so of the regime of Assad in Syria has come to an end, and the rebel groups have won, and they have a majority of the country. So now it's just a matter of getting rid of any other groups that stand in their way, and then finally uniting Syria, hopefully, and moving on from the civil war. They are led by Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, who, according to CNN, has a complicated past. There are some connections with Al-Qaeda, but the group that he formed did kind of, break apart from Al-Qaeda. So they aren't affiliated with Al-Qaeda. They were, not anymore though. They're trying to separate them, put some distance between the two groups in hopes of probably, if I had to guess why they're trying to do that, one, of course, because they don't want to, as they state. And two, if you want better international recognition in aid, you should probably get away from, terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Now, I do believe that the HTS is actually defined as a terrorist group by the United Nations. But the United Nations has also come out and said that, hey, if you guys do this right, we are willing to take you off of that terrorist group list and work with you. So it all comes down to if, Syria wants or needs any international aid with setting up their country again, they need to do it right in the eyes of the United Nations. Yeah, as you can see right here, the United States, Turkey, and the UN, and several other Western nations continue to designate the HTS as a terrorist organization, and the US actually even has a bounty on the leader's head. But like I said, I'm sure that these classifications and different things, they're willing to change, and I know that they will change should Syria kind of meet their requirements too. Now, Syria, of course, they aren't obligated to listen to any other country because they are their own country, they are sovereign. But if they want help there you go. You gotta deal with this too. So we can kind of look into more stuff. I'm basically just gonna skim through this article, kind of break down what CNN is saying, because they of course have way more accurate information than I would. But then I will go off and talk about, you know, what I think will happen with Syria. So why now? Great question. So CNN says that the rebels seize an opportunity, capitalizing on weakened government whose key allies like Russia and Iran are heavily preoccupied with other conflicts. Of course, Russia is drawn up in Ukraine. They have been for almost 3 years now. And Iran is fighting with Israel, or they are fighting a sort of proxy war with Israel. So what comes next in Syria? So Jelani declared victory for the entire Islamic nation on Sunday in his public remarks since the coup, which he said marks a new chapter in the history of the region. My heart longed for this moment, said Jelani. There is not a single household in Syria that the war has not touched, and that is entirely true. The country has essentially been destroyed by the civil war. It was a very beautiful country beforehand. If you don't know what pre-civil war Syria looks like, you're missing out. Go look at some pictures. It's a beautiful country. So right now, it's I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna like read through this whole thing. It's a bunch of uncertainty. No one really knows what's gonna happen because it just happened, and we still have to kind of see how the full end of the civil war kind of pans out. We have to see what HTS does. You know, are they going to go for a more democratic government, or are they not going to do that? I think they said that they wanted to do something like that, but that doesn't always mean that they will. The US has cautioned that ISIS could attempt to take advantage of this power vacuum in the country currently. I don't think that they would, mostly because ISIS is very weak right now, at least compared to what they were at their greatest extent. But you never know, you know, they could always, I could be surprised, you know, war, especially civil war, is very uncertain. Now, here's a good point. What about the other groups in the country? So Jelani has gone to great lengths to reassure Christian and Kurdish Syrians as his offensive spread across the country that HTS wouldn't do any bad things against them. But once again, there's a lot of uncertainty. There were a lot of promises made when the US left Afghanistan and the Taliban took back over, and most of, if not all of those promises weren't upheld. Now, this is completely different from Afghanistan. So it's definitely not entirely fair to compare the two. There is no, you know, foreign power that is occupying any of Syria. It's just, you know, within rebel groups that are supported by those foreign powers. Whereas in Afghanistan, of course, you had the government that the US was supporting, but the US itself was also present in Afghanistan. That's why the withdrawal was such a big issue. That's why it was so controversial, because the US was leaving the government that they supported, and that government that they supported got wrecked by the Taliban. But this, like I said, is entirely different. So what does this mean for the world? This is kind of the question that I will go off of in a little bit. But the fall of Assad has huge reverberations throughout the region and around the world. Reverberations, that is a word that I've never said before, and I nailed it first time. Good job, me. The development has left Iran weakened and will broadly be celebrated in Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described Assad's collapse as a historic day in the history of the Middle East. Ironic. Israel will welcome Iran's sudden loss of influence in Syria, but Netanyahu's forces have, at the same time, already moved to bolster the country's border with Syria, a reflection of the yeah, see, look, that's a word I've also never said before, and I didn't nail it first time. Trepidation, and that underpins events of the last few days. In Russia, where Assad fled to, Putin will also be nursing the effects of Assad's fall from power. There are obvious military effects. Russia used 2 bases in Syria to project strength in the Middle East, and potential repercussions for Ukraine, with Putin's hands weakened in any future negotiations. And for many of the 14 million Syrians forced to flee their homes since the civil war began, the question is whether they can and will return home, either voluntarily or against their will. Germany and Austria paused asylum applications for Syrians within hours of Assad's regime falling, amid a Europe-wide hardening in sentiment towards asylum seekers. But an EU spokesperson has said the conditions are not yet met for a safe return. The UK also temporarily paused decisions on asylum claims for Syrian nationals. Once again, this is basically just expressing uncertainty in the region. I mean, it's pretty obvious that the HTS has won, and I honestly don't know enough to tell you what would happen with like the SDF up north, the Kurdish. But like I said multiple times already, it's just one of those things that we're gonna have to wait it out and kind of see what happens. So what about Syria on the international stage? This is what we kind of want to talk about, because not only does it have to do with, you know, real world events, it also has to do with my videos, because Syria, for me at least, is usually aligned with Russia and Iran in my videos. That has changed. They probably and will not be aligned with Russia and Iran anymore. Instead, we're more likely to see Syria on the side of like Western countries. Now, let me go ahead and say that in that specific scenario, it would only be if like, Russia versus USA and Syria has to get involved. If they had to get involved in such conflict, they would choose probably the United States over Russia, mostly because Assad was supported by Russia, the old government of Syria, which they just beat. So I don't know why they would try to realign with Russia. That doesn't make any sense. So it's kind of big for my videos, if you think about it. Also huge for the United States and any other anti-Iran countries like Israel. Iran's influence over the Middle East is pretty much gone outside of their own country. They do still have Hezbollah within Lebanon, and then there's, everything with Yemen. But other than that, Iran has lost all influence over the Middle East, which is huge for countries like the United States or any Western country or any country in general that has issues with Iran. This also basically kicks Russia out of the Middle East. They have military bases in Syria, or should I say had. Syria was an ally of Russia. That is no longer the case because Syria is no longer under the rule of Assad. He is now Russian. Well, no, he's obviously going to be Syrian, but he lives in Russia now. So if you are like pro-Western, this is a good thing. Not pro-Western, hate NATO and the United States, this is a bad thing. But fundamentally, that shouldn't matter. It should be more so focusing on learning and researching the Civil War and figuring out who the good guys and bad guys are. Even if there aren't like any good guys, there's always going to be someone that's like a really bad guy. And I think a lot of people would agree that Assad's regime was probably not the best thing. But I'm not going to sit here and go into detail about that. We were covering the Civil War, and I think we've covered it pretty well so far. So yeah, that's actually all that I have for the video. I did just want to do a quick video on the topics, since I do cover everything from Ukraine now to Israel and Palestine. We even talked about the coup that took place in Niger at one point, and really just a bunch of different world events. So like, I don't usually cover those things like on a weekly basis, but I would like to if I could. I am a mapping YouTuber, but that doesn't mean I always have to do mapping. I also enjoy politics, and this is politics, so there we go. Anyway, I guess I'll give you guys a little bit of information since this video is a little bit slow. So I'm recording this on Sunday, December 15th. Christmas is in 10 days. That's crazy. I know that I said that I wouldn't talk about college anymore until I had to go back. Well, I'm keeping my word on that, sort of. I'm not going back to college for spring semester until January. However, I'm going back to go take a final like tomorrow, or when you're seeing this a couple days ago. So that's why I'm recording this on Sunday, which means that there could be things that happen in Syria between now and Wednesday that are not present in this video, so it's always important to kind of keep updated on the event. I did a very broad overview of the Syrian Civil War and recent events. There has been a lot of other smaller things that have happened since that I did not cover in this video, so as always, if you want more information, check your sources, make sure they're accurate, and of course, research for yourself. Don't let any other person tell you something and you automatically believe that, because that is not good practice, at least in my opinion. So yeah, things could have happened, and after this video is published, even more things could happen. So the information in this video, while accurate, could always change, because it's accurate as of December 15th at 10:35 p.m. 2024. But yeah, after I take my final, back to that, I guess, I will be done with the fall semester. I am doing a class in the winter semester online, so it shouldn't affect the videos at all, because I'm not expecting it to really occupy my life too much. It is, a shorter class. It's not like a whole semester worth of class, which means it's probably a lot more work at once, but still over a shorter amount of time. I'm not expecting it to influence the videos at all, but just in case anyone was interested, there you go. That's gonna do it for today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Freezoy, Zaylance, Georgie Badev, Deathlord182, Serminator, Pablo Sigma Cat, Deathstrider X, Hammertoad45, Connor the Gamer, Nevada Garbage Trucks, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.